What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Brandon, back with another edition of the Macro Insights podcast. But first, before we get started, a little disclaimer. I am not a financial advisor, and the guest is not giving financial advice. So everything you hear on this podcast is strictly opinion and should not be taken as financial advice. We disclose if we have any holdings discussed in this podcast, and you should not be following us as financial advisors. You should discuss this with professionals before you get involved or invested. And as always, it's not financial advice. So please take this strictly as our opinions and for entertainment purposes only. Now let's get into the show. Hey, good evening. Can you all hear me? All right.
Good evening, Brandon. Yes, we can. How are you doing, Dr. Anas?
Hey, hello.
Hey, I'm not sure what happened. The original scheduled room wouldn't start for me. So if you guys could all retweet this one to get the word out there here really quick. I apologize for that. I'm not sure quite what was going on, but yeah, it seems like we're up and running now, though.
It seems Twitter been having problems for the last 2 weeks, and today I've been having problems just trying to get in.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. I tried to start the space and it said unable to start scheduled space. So, it was a bit of a I don't know, a weird start to this, but we're back up and rolling. So, Dr. Nas, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? So it seems like there was kind of a surprise OPEC not meeting, but voluntary cut that was made this weekend. I don't know if you want to kind of go into that, and then just kind of go into the spiel as to why why this happened, and if the U.S. knew, just kind of those relations.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good morning for those who are on the eastern part of the world, for those who are in the Middle East, and good evening for those who are in the United States. It was a surprise, although they needed the cut. We knew that they needed to cut, but it seems that for a while they ignored it, and then there was this surprise. And I personally believe that there were no leaks simply because of the holy month of Ramadan, where life turned upside down in a positive way, by the way. But most of the meetings, most of the talk happened at night, while most Western journalists basically are asleep. And therefore, there were no leaks regarding whatever coordination that's being made. Here are the problems we are seeing right now. Because there was no clarity, we have an announcement, no clarity on the reasons, no clarity on anything that happened. That led to various experts, pundits, analysts, etc., proposing several reasons for the decision to go for a voluntary cut. So what I'm going to demonstrate right now are the views that's been expressed since Sunday. These are not my views. I'm just telling you what people are talking about. It is easy to divide those views into three categories. The first one is political, the second one is financial, and the third one is economic. And as you all know, when it comes to politics and conspiracy theory and this stuff, this is more widespread than anything else. So you're going to see more people believing in the politics and the conspiracy theory than the others. So again, I am presenting here what people are saying, not what I am saying. So when it comes to the political views, there are a group of people who believe that the decision was purely political and it came from the top down. So it wasn't done based on any market studies or anything else. It's purely political. And they believe that one group believe, which is the largest part of this group, believe it is intended to basically a message intended to Biden because of certain problems between the Biden administration and the Saudi government. And the Saudis were able to convince their allies to go for this voluntary cut. And they provide some evidence to that. The SPR release that the Congress forced the Biden administration to do, which is the 26 million barrels, will be released between the 1st of April and the end of June. And the OPEC Plus cut is going to happen on the 1st of May. So it's going to happen just right there in the middle. So some people looked at this as a reaction to the SPR release. And there are evidence to show that the Saudis and some OPEC officials were not happy with the SPR release because they view themselves as market managers and they view the SPR release as intervention that spoiled their management. I will talk about my views on this later on. So the first group of people who are talking about this in a political sense, they look at it as something between the Saudi government and the US government. And some of them go even deeper and say, well, there are deeper issues than this because the US government did not like the Saudi-Iranian agreement, etc. So they feel that there are some deeper issues and it's not related to the SPR. Here, I would like to mention something important. The paragraph that's been written in the Financial Times, quoting someone about the Biden administration promised the Saudis that they will buy oil for the SPR, and then they reneged on that, and the Saudis get angry. I can assure you, this is a complete nonsense. The refilling the SPR has nothing to do with it. The fact is, and now I'm speaking, I'm not just talking about what the others believe. Now I'm speaking. The Saudis, basically, if you look at their interest, it is in their interest to have a lower SPR. Why they have to sell oil to the Biden administration to refill the SPR so the Biden administration can use it again before the election in 2024 and lower prices and just cause problems to investors and everyone else. It does not make sense. So that quote in the Financial Times basically does not make any sense. Back to those political views. Again, for those who just joined us, I'm just presenting what people are saying. So those who are talking about politics, they say, some of them say, it is related to the Saudi-Iranian agreement and that they are withdrawing oil from the market to allow the Iranians to sell more at the time when everyone wanted higher prices. So in a sense, they look at it as part of the Iranian agreement. Personally, and now I am speaking, I don't buy this argument at all for a simple reason. Because the agreement was brokered by China, and China does not want to see even 5 cents increase in oil prices. So it does not make sense to satisfy Iran and anger China, who brokered that deal. So I think this is just a theory that's been floating around. The second group of people, they look at it from a financial point of view. And the idea here is as simple as this, that there are no problems in the oil market, but because of the banking crisis in the United States, the decrease in prices that we've seen during that period was purely financial and does not reflect oil market realities. And speculators basically took advantage of that and they dragged oil prices down. And their evidence basically is statements from OPEC and OPEC delegates when they were saying that the decrease in prices is financial and therefore we are not going to cut production. So, in a sense, that OPEC is paying attention to those financial issues, and someone, whether the Saudis or others, literally decided to teach those who shorted the market a lesson, and they did what they did just to burn them. And we've seen people on Monday, basically, some people lost a lot of money. At the same time, there were circulation of old statements and a video for Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, who is the Saudi energy minister, threatening investors and threatening speculators that if they try to monopolize the market, that he will make them out. The video was widely distributed. The statements were widely distributed, and the prince himself was sending it to other people too. So some people took that as an evidence that it could be just financial, and they just want to burn the speculators who took advantage of the banking crisis to influence the oil market. The third group, and this is mostly kind of even-headed analysts, they look at it as economic, that oil prices are low. If you look at the forward curve at the end of the year, oil prices are low from OPEC point of view. We have inflation. We have problems with the recovery in China. We have all the issues related to the shipping and reshipping of the Russian crude. We have the Fed, the increases in interest rates, the inflation that still exists, and the increasing value of the dollar that is wreaking havoc on the oil market because it is decreasing quantity demanded. Since oil is priced in US dollar, every time, even if oil prices are the same, but every time the dollar goes up, the imports bills of various countries, especially the poorer countries, basically go up just because of the higher value of the dollar. And that's coming from the actions of the Fed. So they look at it as, if you look at all of these things, they needed to do something, and they decided to cut. So if you look at the various views, again, we have three groups of people. One is looking at the politics, one is looking at the financial side of it, and one is looking at the economic side of it. But within that, every argument has holes in it. Again, the reason why, because we don't have clarity until today why they did this and how did they do it. So people fear, and this is a criticism to the economic argument, people fear that, okay, if you are worried about the dollar, worried about inflation, worried about the Fed, well, you are cutting production, oil prices will go up, that will increase inflation, and the situation will become worse. So every argument has holes in it. But what we heard from OPEC officials until today is also important. And what we are hearing from them is that there are significant volatility in the market that was the result of the banking crisis. And we've seen like that $10 swing over that period. And the market needed some sort of stability regardless of the price level, and it needed some clarity, and therefore they did that. That does not add up too. So now you have 4 point of views: the political, the economic, the financial, and what we heard so far, but none of them adds up from our point of view. And we really don't know what the truth is until today, and no one can claim that they know what the truth is. The only fact we know at this stage is that it has nothing to do with the SPR, despite the timing of it. Now to move to our views, we were the first to publish a report on this on Sunday, immediately after the meeting, on one of our Substack letters. Here, I would like to clarify that we do have two types of reports. We have the weekly newsletter, which is released on Mondays, and it comes with other reports during the week, like the drilling report and the inventory report and some other breaking news, etc. So we call that the weekly newsletter. And then we have the daily energy report. The daily energy report is produced every day, every working day. And I post all of those on my Twitter feed for those who are interested. There are big differences in prices, because we started with the main newsletter, but a lot of people complained that they needed a cheaper option. So the daily energy report is the cheaper option for those who would like to read. It is unique in several ways, because what we do is we pick up the most important news of the day, and we explain them, and we comment on them. And literally we say, well, this is false, this is not, this is ignore this, etc. That's what it is. And if you look at today's report, we've done this with a couple of news items that some people made a big fuss out of them and made big news out of them, but they are really literally nothing. So we published this on Sunday, and the main idea that we focused on in this, that the best way basically was to answer certain questions rather than just to tell a story. And the first question we raised was, why did OPEC members cut output? I already mentioned the four groups: the political, financial, economic, and OPEC views on why they did that. From our point of view, we focus mostly on the economic part, but we don't have a definite answer. So we came up with more questions. So we believe that OPEC members either realize that the global oil demand is way lower than existing forecasts, that the demand or demand growth is actually declining, and they are the ones who can have the first information in the world. Why? It's not the EIA, it's not the IEA, it's not Goldman Sachs, it's not me, it's not anyone else. They are the first, basically, because they are the sellers. They are approached by the buyers, so they can know, they have a feel of the demand better than anyone else and earlier than anyone else. And they know that collectively, because one buyer does not know what the other buyers want. They are getting all the buyers, so they know. So the question is, what they know that we don't, in terms of declining, at least decline in growth in demand, what they know that we don't know. And I have a comment on this later on, so remember that, the issue of growth and demand. What they know about the banking crisis is the banking crisis, basically, and its impact is larger than what most people believe right now. And what about the Chinese economy? What they know about it that we don't know. Is it true that the growth in the Chinese economy is way lower than what people are expecting? And the reason why we are saying this, because in our 2023 at that time, that we expect the growth in the Chinese economy to be lackluster in the first half of the year, and it will be mostly in the transportation sector, and it will take time for the economy to recover. So are they seeing that too? Because they did not believe it at the beginning. So what about the issues that those who believe in the economic factors mentioned regarding the Fed, the inflation, the value of the dollar, and is that really affecting the demand in various ways? So the bottom line here is related to demand until they take such an action, although they kept emphasizing the fact that this is precautionary. And in fact, the moment they said precautionary, the groups among, or the group that say it is political, they say, well, it is really precautionary because it is a test. It's a political test. So it seemed like every word they said, there are a group of people who are kind of opposing it in other evidence. Our view is that the oil price volatility played a role, and it really scared them. The swings that we've seen during the banking crisis is definitely influenced this decision. The Fed and the intention of the Fed played a role in making the situation really cloudy for the future of various economies. And therefore, they felt that probably they need to provide some clarity. But again, you cannot provide clarity with voluntary cuts, because someone might cut 100, 200, 50, no cut. You are not providing clarity in this case. So there are problems there. That's why we couldn't really figure out exactly what it is. It is mostly toward the economic factors, but there are many issues within that. Now, the second question is, why was the output cut voluntary, and why they did not meet and literally agree on a cut? The reason, in our view, is that they are scheduled to meet in June, and there is no reason to call for an extraordinary meeting at this stage to discuss these issues. So there is no meeting. At the same time, they have to do something. They have to cut, and there is no meeting schedule. That's number one. Number two, what happened on the 5th of October 2022 when they met and they decided to reduce the production ceiling by 2 million barrels a day? Notice that I mentioned production ceiling. It wasn't a cut, an actual cut. That's from the ceiling. So when they decided to cut from the ceiling 2 million barrels, that number is important because that does not touch the smaller producers within OPEC Plus who couldn't increase their production to meet their quota because they were not going to cut production, period. They realized that only those who have spare capacity took advantage of higher prices by increasing production. But they were not able to take advantage of that. So they are not going to cut. The problem now, if they cut, if they meet officially, even if they call for an extraordinary meeting and they meet officially, they end up with a serious problem. Those smaller countries are not going to agree to a cut. And OPEC Plus, OPEC before OPEC Plus, and then OPEC Plus now, their decisions are by consensus. So they are not going to get agreement, and therefore the meeting will be failure. So one way to play around that is to go with the voluntary idea. But the third point is the most important. It doesn't matter. Because we knew a long time ago, even 20 years ago, when you talk about OPEC, it is about what the Saudis are doing. It is the power of OPEC is really the Saudi power. If Saudi Arabia exits OPEC, OPEC is nothing, period. So the easiest way basically to deal with this is focus on the Saudi behavior. If they promise to cut 500, they are going to cut 500, simply because we have a history of credibility here. When they said we volunteer another million, they did volunteer 1 million barrel cut. We have a history there to believe them, while the others are exactly the opposite. And anyone who believes the Russians basically need to think again. The Russians are not going to cut, and the Russians basically will cut whatever uh, they promise they need to cut because of certain technical issues, or they are not able to sell. But that's it. But voluntarily, they are not going to do it, and they never, since 2016 until today, the Russian record on cuts is really terrible. So uh, I just mentioned the three reasons why it was a voluntary cut. The third question is, why suddenly with no advance notice or leaks? I mentioned at the beginning that the holy month of Ramadan has a role in it, but there were other issues that we need to pay attention to. Since December, the message out of OPEC Plus was that the production cut of October 2022 will remain until the end of 2023 with no change. Notice this expression, no change. They did not say we will not cut. They did not say we will not increase. They said no change. And that was the message all along, that we are not going to change the production and the cut will remain valid until the end of 2023. Our own understanding and interpretation of this since December is that they will not increase production, because remember that prices went up for a period of time, and some people were saying that OPEC will increase production, etc., and some politicians called on OPEC to increase production. So we understood no change as to mean no increase in production. And those statements came from the top officials in OPEC, including the Saudi oil minister or energy minister. But later, during the banking crisis, we started hearing news about we will not change production, and it means we are not going to cut. So the statement since December is we are not going to increase production. After the banking crisis, we are not going to cut. And these statements did not come directly from top officials. It came through leaks. It came through delegates without names. So you can see that the sourcing became different in this case. But the general impression that's being given to the market that there will be no cut, no change in production. So regardless of what they are saying, and for those who've been following me on Twitter for a very long time, you've seen me tweeting this tweet several times, that what I learned from working in the investment part of the industry, because my background in private equity, is that the perception of what you say is more important of what you say. And that's really the big problem right now we see in the market about the OPEC production cut. That whatever they say is one thing, the perception in the market is something else, and they were not able to manage that perception. And the ability to manage that perception basically is really an incredible ability for a person or a company or a government or a politician. This is very important trait if someone can get that ability to manage the perception of what they are saying. But most of the problems we are seeing right now in the market is the result of those perceptions, and that's why I mentioned the four explanations earlier when I talk about the politics, the finance, the economics, and what OPEC said. The other issue related to this is, do they really need to cut? And the answer is yes. And the reason why, because last December, we published a long report showing that OPEC need to cut. But because they have problems with the smaller countries who are not going to agree to additional cut after October, we made a proposal. And the proposal was, if you review is to have the October cut until 2023. And OPEC reports show a massive increase in global demand in the fourth quarter of 2023. Therefore, you cannot say you want to cut and continue the cut to the 2023, while OPEC itself in its report showing that OPEC has to increase production by 1 million barrels a day. You cannot have it both ways. So our solution to that was, okay, since you guys are going to be, you expect the demand to go up in the future, and you are going to increase production in the fourth quarter, do this. Forward the cut to the first half of the year, because you need to cut in the first half. So forward the cut to the first half of the year. So the total cut of the year will be the same even for the smaller producers. But then once you are done and you stabilize prices, you end up with backward-dated curve from the 1st of January. And you keep that, you work really hard to keep that backwardation throughout the year until the end of 2023. You will be successful in providing stability to the market, and you will be in complete control. Unfortunately, our view has been ignored, but personally and my team, basically, we learned the lesson out of it, that not to be discouraged even when you are ignored, because time will tell who is right. The other issue related to the surprise, so in a sense, what I'm saying is the cut itself, it is a surprise for everyone, but in a sense, because they needed to cut, we knew this from December, in a sense, it wasn't a surprise. But historically speaking, OPEC was, and I'm talking about OPEC here, I'm not talking about OPEC Plus, because OPEC Plus does not have that long history. OPEC was extremely successful in affecting the market and changing the sentiment when everything was literally a total surprise. We have several instances over a period of about 30 years where OPEC surprised the market and the market reacted to exactly what OPEC wanted. So keeping things secret and surprising the market is very effective. And we've seen that on Monday. We knew that. So our view, since we published this on Sunday before the market opened, our view was that, okay, the cut is voluntary. The total cut is 1.66, 1,660,000 barrels a day if you count the Russian extension. And we did several scenarios trying to figure out how much will be the actual cut. Our view is that the actual cut will be about 600 to 700,000, mostly from Saudi Arabia and UAE. The others, is very hard to see them complying. In Iraq, we had a dilemma, simply because we believe that the Iraqis are not going to comply, but because of the deal, the problems they have with the with Kurdistan oil and the recent judgment they got from an international arbitration court that literally prohibited Turkey from selling the Kurdistan oil as a different entity because they needed to go to the central government. And one of the jokes about this is that the Iraqis won in the international court because of a law, because of an agreement that Saddam Hussein and his president Hassan al-Bakr signed in 1973. Just kind of one of the ironies of history here. That what saved Iraq now and what supported Iraq was something that Saddam Hussein and Hassan al-Bakr, basically the Baathists, signed. Anyway, we covered this in today's report, by the way, in details. For those who are interested, we covered 2 Iraq stories and we discussed them in details. The one is the agreement with the Kurds and the return of the flow of oil into the pipeline, and the agreement between the Iraqis and Total regarding the $27 billion deal that went sour. They reached both of them today. So it is a historic day for Iraq today that they reached both. However, as we wrote in the report, we are pessimistic about both. And our view is We believe the results of the agreements, once we see tankers in Jihan airport and Jihan port in Turkey loading the Iraqi oil, then we can say at that moment, yes, the deal worked. As it is right now, it is just up in the air. And one of the issues related to that is that the agreement is a temporary agreement, is not a final agreement, and hinges on two issues. The first one is it hinges on agreement on the new Iraqi oil law, which we don't know when it's going to be finalized and how they are going to work on it. And it hinges on the new budget. So, from our view, everything is still in the air. And unless we see that oil being loaded at Jihan port, it's not over. As for the deal with Total, I think many problems will emerge in the future. And there are many issues that are really of concern, because you need water injection in the south for those old oil fields, and a lot of water injection. And there is not enough water. So part of the deal with Total is to create some facilities to treat seawater as part of the agreement. And if this agreement fails and there is no treated seawater, then Iraq's production is going to decline. So that's really a serious problem. Anyway, I deviated from the main issue simply because those two pieces of news regarding Iraq are important today, and we cover them in our report. So, what is the impact on the market? Again, we published this report on Sunday before the market opened. We believe that the actual cut, is going to be between 600 to 700,000. The impact on prices is going to be limited. We believe that there will be a knee-jerk reaction, exactly like what we've seen on Monday. Many shorts basically would be burnt, and then that's it. And that's the whole impact. And probably we've seen most of it right now. The increase in prices today, and as we speak right now, the few cents basically is mostly related to inventories. The API, the American Petroleum Institute, released its estimates today. We'll see what the EIA is going to say tomorrow. But there is something kind of I noticed about the API, kind of very strange. If you look at all the numbers they published, all of them center around the number 4. So if you look at the decline in crude, the decline in gasoline, the decline in distillates, and there were some other numbers too, all of them around 4. I'm not using this to discount the value of it. It just was a very easy way for me to remember the numbers, because if you round them up, all of them 4s. So whatever we've seen in price action later today in the day and right now, when after the Asian markets opened, they are related really to inventories, not to the OPEC decision for the voluntary action. And if you look at really the price action, OPEC cut is going to start on the 1st of May. And we've seen all the reaction basically mostly in the front of the curve. Most of it, but it did affect all the curve. If you looked at December, for example, prices went up by about $3. I think probably that's one of the intentions of OPEC, is to focus on the end of the curve rather than the front of the curve. I still believe, based on the December report that we published, that OPEC, if they are serious about their objectives, they need to flip the market the whole year for backwardation. They really need to do that. And if they do it just on monthly basis, it's not going to work on their favor. OPEC officials have not outlined really this clearly. They need to hopefully we see some clarification on this later on. Here, I would like to add 2 points that are important to the discussion, and you guys are not going to hear them anywhere else. Why in the world, why in hell, the Russian government, the Putin government, will go out of its way and issue a press release saying that their decision to extend the cut. Remember, they already announced a cut, the 500,000 cut for March, and then they extended that for April. They extended that to the end of the year. They said the extension was not coordinated with OPEC Plus. Let me say that again. The Russian government issued a press release saying that the extension that they promised OPEC Plus to do for the 500,000 has not been coordinated with OPEC Plus. Why? This is not even in favor of Putin. That means that OPEC Plus basically is trying to show the Congress and the US government and others, oh, by the way, we are not cooperating with Russia. But this was seriously a bad idea to convince the Russians to issue a press release like this, because the press release itself, at least it is coordinated. It does not make sense. And the other issue is they cannot talk about clarity and stability of the market when it is voluntary. Well, if someone today they decide, okay, I'm going to produce just 50,000, and a week later I'm going to produce the additional 200, and then I'm going to cut my production for the whole 200. This is not providing stability, and this is not providing clarity to the market. And this gives some credit to those who believe in the political view that probably this was not well studied and it did not come from the team itself, it came from somewhere else. But that gives us a point of view that we wrote on Sunday. I think that is worth a while to think about. There is a possibility that this voluntary cut that's been announced now and will start on the 1st of May, it might become formal during the June's meeting. And if it becomes formal, then at that time they provide all the studies and all the reasoning, and they can say that we provided the clarity, we provided stability, etc. when it is formal. So there is a very high probability that this voluntary cut might turn out to be part of the agreement in June. And OPEC and OPEC Plus, they have a long history to pull a rabbit out of the hat. So they can manage it. They can do it. Now, the final comments on our views on the politics of it and what the Biden reaction is. On Sunday, in the report we published on Sunday, we expected a strong reaction from the Biden administration and from some senators and congressmen. And boy, we were surprised to find out we were really wrong. The reaction was very mild. And then we started hearing that the Saudis consulted with or informed the Biden administration and told them that we are going to cut. And Kirby, I think he's the one who made that statement. So the Biden administration knew about it ahead of time. And for some reason, they just kept a very low profile. We don't know why. So we wrote in the report that we were expecting a strong reaction. It did not happen. And again, we don't know why. And again, back to talk about coordination, we don't know what that word is, because it seems like we've been overusing it and we don't know what it means right now. The other issue is related to this, that we have to remember that the cut is going to happen just before the driving season in the United States. And this is an issue for the Biden administration. So why they are keeping a very low profile? What's going on? I remember the following. Before the OPEC announcement or the surprise announcement, gasoline inventories were going down, and they went down by almost 4 million barrels a day today, based on the API. 4 million barrels, not a day, 4 million barrels based on the API numbers. So we are, as of last week, before this recent 4 million barrel decline, gasoline inventories were the lowest since 2014. I haven't looked at the numbers yet to see where we stand right now relative to the past, but we are at critical levels. And we're at critical levels. And if you look at prices, we see a debacle between gasoline prices and oil prices. Oil prices were going down, gasoline prices were going up, simply because it is a refining issue, it's a product issue, it's not a crude issue. And then OPEC announcement came in, and it gives the Biden administration all the ammunition to literally blame OPEC, blame Russia, blame the whole group for any increase in gasoline prices in the future, although some of that increase is coming from refining problems, not from OPEC and OPEC Plus. So you can see that even if you want to discuss politics, it is very confusing. So what is the conclusion out of that? Really, I mean, the picture is very cloudy right now. You want to discuss politics, it's very cloudy. You want to discuss the economics, it's very cloudy. You want to discuss the finance, it's very cloudy. And you can see the benefits from all of this to Russia, because Russia now, with all the bad quality of the data that we are seeing right now, Russia can literally play the market in various ways, and a lot of people will not know what's going on. As for the Russians, we don't think that the Russians are going to cut voluntarily, period. In our 2023 outlook, our investigation basically resulted in two numbers. The first number is that the Russians will not be able to sell about 300 to 400,000 barrels of products, and then they have to do something, either literally crash the market and crash the price so they can sell it to some poor country or something. And the second number is the average decline in production for 2023 is 600,000 barrels a day, which is close to the announced cut, but not more than that. So by them saying we are extending the 500,000 to the end of the year, that supports our estimates. But I seriously think that this number could be lower. And people did not pay attention that in 2022, the drilling activities in Russia was almost historic, despite the sanctions and despite all the problems. There were several explanations for it, probably that foreign companies want to make the most out of it before they leave, etc., or the Russian companies want to use their money before their money get confiscated because of the war or something. We don't know. But we've seen massive activities, and because of this massive activity, it's very hard to see a sharp decline in Russian production. Brandon, that's what I have today, and probably we have about 10 minutes left for some questions and answers.
Yeah, I mean, so overall, just outstanding stuff from Dr. Anas. I really appreciate your time. But yeah, like you said, I know you only have an hour. So Raul, David, if I'll give you guys the floor first if you have any questions. If not, I can start letting some people up to ask from the crowd.
So my initial question, and I think that was important that you highlighted, was the Biden administration and the response to the Saudi cuts in peak driving season. How do you anticipate the mitigation of, let's say, oil costs, and how the administration is going to necessarily stimulate that whole uptick that we might see?
We don't know. And the reason why, because there is a counter argument to that the growth in demand in the second half is going to be way, way lower than what people expect, which means that it could be, although our estimates for the growth in demand for 2023 is one of the lowest in the industry, and there is a possibility that we even end up wrong on this. So if there is some sort of coordination, probably they see some numbers that we are not aware of. They see some really weak demand. The issue for me is this, and this is really a big problem. You look at what they've done, and you look what OPEC ministers are saying, and you look at OPEC report, they don't add up. So either OPEC report in this case is worthless, and they need to make adjustments, or there is something else going on that we don't know about. But as we speak today, if you look at the voluntary cuts and you read OPEC report, and I urge you to go and read OPEC report, the last one that was released last month, and read it and look at it and look at the views toward 2023. They don't add up. So there is a serious problem there, and we don't know what it is. Back to you.
All right, appreciate that. David, do you have anything else? Or if not, Raul? And then we got one from the crowd. So
given Dr. Anas's position, but if Raul has a question, go ahead.
No, you can go, David.
So this is just a hypothetical, but in the Janes and Hole 2021 emergency actions, in one of the provisions, they mentioned a potential nationalizations to oil, specifically gas. And I would love to have the perspective of an expert, because this is a pretty extreme view that was represented within the fiscal administration. And if we're looking at other precedents set by different administrative like language, there is this type of idea coming around.
Are you talking about the Biden administration?
Yes, specifically.
Okay. Well, good to hear from you, Raul. It's been a while.
This was David. Raul, this was David again. Sorry about that.
Sorry. Oh, okay. All right. We have seen several socialist / communist ideas coming out of this administration since they came to office. And when it comes, we heard even from Secretary of Energy Granholm some really leftist ideas. But we were convinced, because we had a space with Sohaib. It was a long space talking about all the choices facing the Biden administration. This is recorded, by the way, and you can search it in my Twitter timeline. If you look at all choices, they are first either politically costly or they are financially costly. And the Biden administration will not end up with both. So all those extreme ideas are not going to happen, especially that we are coming into an election next year, and they are very careful the way they are going to craft their message. The moment you nationalize one company in the United States, you just lost most of the Americans, period. Because even those who are Democrats, there are many Democrats who are in the center. And these socialist / communist ideas are not welcome. But you can go over that space, and we listed all the options regarding gasoline products, limiting exports, banning exports altogether, etc. All of them are difficult choices, and they come with a very high cost. Back to you.
all right, great questions there, David. But we do have like 5 minutes left, so I'm going to go to the crowd here. Jagameet, I believe, is how you say it. If I'm saying it incorrectly, I apologize, but the floor is yours.
No, that's fine. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Amazing. First of all, Dr. Anas, thank you so much for all your work, especially these last couple of days. I think I've listened to you basically nonstop since Sunday, and it's been absolutely wonderful hearing your opinion. It's always welcome. I follow you almost religiously. My question was just kind of a change of pace. In what macro environment would you expect OPEC to increase production? Just kind of a hypothetical. I'm just wondering, this last production cut kind of threw me off. I definitely did not see it coming, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud, and I'm just wondering, what would the macro environment have to look like for them to consider increasing production? And once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate the content.
You're welcome. That's very simple. You need to see a global growth 4 to 5%. That leads to increase in demand by about 800 to 1.4 million barrels a day. Remember that everything we've been seeing was just a recovery. We are on the edge right now to go through growth relative to 2019. But you need a growth of 800,000 to 1.4 million barrels a day of growth and demand to see them increasing production.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And sorry,
You're welcome.
may I ask one more question?
Go ahead.
Yep, go for it.
Dr. Nas, in your opinion, and you kind of touched on this just speaking previously, what do you think the American response will be? Or what do you think the most realistic American response will be? Obviously, they still have the SPR. I think they were going to increase, or they're going to release 26 million barrels. But from what I understand, this was previously mandated by Congress in 2017. But I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that. Thanks again.
Okay. One issue I did not touch on, because in the Saudi spaces on Twitter, basically, they brought up the OPEC legislation a lot. So that's part of the political arguments that we mentioned earlier, that some people who believe in the politics of it, that some people get angry because a committee in the Senate basically approved the OPEC and moving it in the Senate where it's supposed to be dead, basically. So someone seemed like reneged on a promise they made, and they moved that in OPEC. In OPEC, by the way, this is the No OPEC Act, which means that they can extend the old Sherman Antitrust Act to include other nations and other companies outside the United States, because the act is limited to the United States, and now they want to expand it globally. And it's an old act. It's over 20 years old. It did pass the Senate and the Congress twice. President George W. Bush ignored it when it reached his desk after it passed both houses. And then President Obama ignored it after it passed both houses. But the issue here is, given the tension between the Biden administration and the Saudis, probably there is a fear that President Biden might sign it. I don't believe that he will sign it. I think the politics of it is way, way larger than anything we have seen. And even if he signed it, it will and becomes a law, it has no impact until the president authorizes the Justice Department to conduct an investigation and authorize them to act on the investigation. So we've seen this with JASTA, for example, which is a law that being passed against Saudi Arabia because of September 11th. It did pass by the 2/3 majority, so the president has no choice. President Obama tried to veto it. He couldn't because it was 2/3 majority. But what happened is it needs the authorization of the president basically to conduct these investigations, etc. And it needs the Justice Department to set the rules. And if they don't get the authorization, they cannot do it. In addition, the president, if he authorizes the Justice Department to conduct an investigation, the Justice Department cannot do it without resources, which means that they need appropriation from the Congress. So you can see how messy this situation is when it comes to this. So there are other issues I did not mention in my talk today, but this is one of them. Thank you. Let's take one more question, Brandon or David.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was just about to ask that question. So we do have Algo Manifest here. So Algo, do you have a question to wrap us up with Dr. Anas?
Hi, thank you, Dr. Anas. And I want to ask you, because I was watching the chart and the Bloomberg article came with information by the energy aspects in crude oil, I think energy consultants, and they claim that China was buying crude oil from Russia, and I arrived late to the space. I wanted to ask if this is all a consequence of the war that China is contributing to more supporting the crude oil prices. By this article, the article says that they don't explain where they took that info. The analyst from EA claim that they don't know where they find that information by Sinopec and China and the state-owned oil majors buying increasing the Russian imports of crude oil. I want to know
What
if
was the
you are
question, please? What was the exact question?
the exact question is if you have any information regarding that energy aspects article, energy
Okay,
aspects.
without reference to our colleagues at Energy Aspect, could you ask me the question away from Energy Aspects?
Well, they published that they have the information that PetroChina and Sinuk were increasing the imports from Russian oil in February, and that really builds a case for the recovery of the oil prices in the chart. And in the Bloomberg article, the AI analyst wrote that information in a note without saying where they got the information. That's what Bloomberg article says. So I want to ask you if you believe that's the case, that China.
And are you asking that the increase in prices on Monday was caused because of that?
No, maybe just is if this is a consequence of a continuous support from China through these two oil major state companies from China from
All right.
February up to now.
All right.
That's the question. Sorry.
Let's focus on this point in a different way, and we will end with it.
Thank you very much.
Today, you were asking about China. I'm going to talk about India for a moment. Today, there was a government bank in India that decided that it will not literally settle any shipments or will not pay or settle any payments for any shipments above the $60 price cap. And some people took that as, wow, look at what India is doing, this. And well, it turns out that this bank has massive international operations. And there is a fear that if it was caught by, or the US want really to exercise some power over it, or the EU, they can really hurt a lot of Indians and many companies because of the international operations of this bank. So the Indians wants to play it safe by saying that this bank is not going to settle any shipments period for prices above $60. But there are other local banks that have no international operations can do that. So the idea here is those who concluded, oh, by the way, this is going to reduce oil supply. No, this is not going to change anything. This is just a legal game. They are playing to save the bank operations simply because the operations are international. And this plays into the hands of the independent oil companies in India because with the agreement with the Russians, everyone wants to move to the UAE. Everyone wants to use the UAE banking system. Everyone wants to use the UAE dirham. While the Indian press basically tried to say, well, this is a way to deal with rupees. No, it does not make sense because the companies are already settling their payments in UAE dirham. Now, take the same idea that this is in the news today, and we did publish the comments on this in our daily report today for those who wants to see it. Take the same idea and apply it to China. China basically started this early. They looked at all their oil companies that have international operations, and they prohibited them from importing from Russia. But they let the independent refiners and the smaller shipping companies that have no international operations import the oil from Russia. And what they did is they forced the independent refiners to sell their storage to the bigger companies. And they told them, okay, go ahead and fill up your storage from the Russian crude in this case, simply because if you want to punish them, how you are going to punish them? They are local companies. You cannot. So PetroChina and Sinuk and others, all of those, Unipec and all of those, they did not buy the Russian crude. But other countries helped them, like Malaysia, for example, Singapore. They import the Russian crude in coordination with those companies, and then they ship it back to China through Singapore or Malaysia. But suddenly they discovered, after the implementation of the price cap, that if they buy the oil below the price cap, they have no problem. and therefore they can directly now buy it from Russia. They also discovered a legal issue, a legal loophole. The legal loophole is this, and I know that some of the U.S. media basically fell into this trap. When the negotiations of the G7 about the price cap started, Japan rejected this from day one. And the only way Japan can be on board is to give Japan an exemption from the price cap if they buy the oil from Sakhalin Island, because they have companies, they have major investments there, and it's a stone throw from Japan. So they can save a lot on the transportation. But if they save a lot on the transportation, it means that the discount, the Russian discount on oil is very small, and therefore the price is above the price cap. So India and China basically discovered this loophole. If Japan got the exemption, then who is going to punish them for buying oil from Sakhalin above the price cap? Because indirectly, it is an acknowledgement from the G7 that Sakhalin oil can be sold above the price cap. And therefore, that encourages Chinese companies and Indian companies to buy it. Now, you think, well, the other oil is cheaper. No, because the shipping cost is huge. So we got to count the cost within India, within China. So the Sakhalin oil basically become really a good choice for them. Although when they buy it from there, it is above the price cap. So I hope this explanation explain or answer your question.
Yes, thank you very much, Doctor.
You're welcome.
All right, Dr. Anas, thank you so much for coming in. And I know you had just an hour or so for us, so I appreciate that. Why don't you tell people a little bit about your Substack for those that missed that? And, I did pin
Sure.
The two at the top as well.
Sure.
So those
So there are two issues I would like to talk about here for those who hear me for the first time or they are following me for the first time. I tweet a lot of things in Arabic, and most of the retweets are from At-Taqa. At-Taqa is the only media outlet that focuses on energy in the Middle East. And they have a lot of breaking news that the rest of the world does not get. So please use the translate button. Translate button, basically, you benefit a lot from it, not only in Arabic and anything. And sometimes you get the breaking news before anyone else, even before Reuters, Bloomberg, and others. The second point regarding the Substacks, again, we do have two publications. One is at a high rate and one at a low rate. The daily energy report is at $420 a year. So this is almost like $1.15 a day. If you'd like to subscribe to it, there is a wealth of information in that. And sometimes we provide several in-depth reports free. You get breaking news like we did with various events, including the OPEC cut and the comments. And then we have the high rate one, which is weekly, but the weekly comes with other reports. The weekly is the yearly rate is $4,000. And it has a lot of in-depth analysis. We have a section that focuses on gas and LNG. And I can tell you from the day we published this until now, since December, it's very hard to match. And we published one yesterday. You can look at it on addressing the issue. Can the EU ban LNG imports from Russia? Because the game that's being played was or countries in the EU are claiming, oh, we are not importing any gas from Russia. And we succeeded in blocking the Russian imports. That's right. They did, but via pipelines. But they are importing the gas via LNG. So they are playing this game. And now some people are saying, well, this got to stop. And the investigation we've done basically is, can the EU really get rid of the Russian LNG? The Russian LNG, if you look at the data, the last data we have is for February. 20% 20% of the EU imports of LNG comes from Russia. 20%. And if you look around the world right now, there is no replacement. And if we end up with a cold winter and hurricane season, a severe hurricane season in the Gulf of Mexico in the summer, where they need the shipments to fill up the storage for the winter, and a severe winter, then they are in trouble again. And they need that gas. So they cannot ban it. Despite all the hype, they cannot ban that LNG. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you so much. And so those who are not following Dr. Anas, you should definitely do that and check out his Substack. He is my go-to when everything it comes to oil and gas industry. So I really appreciate him coming on. And then this space is also recorded, so feel free to share this around. And I will be putting the audio on my YouTube as well. So give me like a day or so for that. And if the Twitter space does not work, you guys can check it out there. So on that note, Dr. Anas, thank you so much for your time tonight. All right, and everybody have a great rest of your night.